Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Chattering with Nicholas Vince. And in a few moments, I'm going to be talking with Ben Meares. Before I do that, I just wanted to basically remember Simon Sace, who passed away this week after a really long, extraordinary battle, in fact, with cancer. I'm sure most of you know who Simon Sace was. If you're not familiar with Simon, basically, he is the guy who designed this. I love the way the light's catching it at the moment, just like it did in the movie. This is I can't quite remember who created this for me, but it is a wonderful recreation of the puzzle box. You'll find all sorts of tributes to Simon online, and I have to say that one of my favorites was scrolling back through his timeline. He had created this wonderful picture which showed a Lego man going upstairs and going into an attic, and the attic had chains, and the next thing you see that he obviously looks like Pinhead, a Lego Pinhead. And I think that just reminded me just how much Simon's sense of humor, his wonderful sense of humor, was what I remember most about him. Sadly, I'd not really seen Simon for decades, but wonderfully talented man. I know he has many fans out there. So just my personal condolences to his family and friends. And and his work, as I say, basically, if you think of Hellraiser, if people say Hellraiser, you either think of Pinhead or you think of the puzzle box. Those are the two images that really come to mind. So sorry to see you go, mate. And no doubt we'll meet each other again in a future lifetime. Okay, so moving on from that, let me just introduce Ben Meares. Hi, Ben.
Hello.
Yeah. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm coming at you live from a motel in Newport, Oregon.
Oh, wow.
I'm over in coastal Oregon right now. I was in the Lincoln City Kite Festival. Well, I wasn't in it. I was at the Lincoln City Kite Festival yesterday because I refused to live like an adult, and I saw that it was happening and went, you know what? I'm going to go and watch a bunch of kites fly. And it was really cool.
When you say kites, I'm presuming, are these really big things that they fly?
One of them was, it must have been 30 or 40 feet long, this massive spinning vortex thing. And yeah, I don't know. I was sitting there going, wait, why am I here? I saw that it was happening and went, well, I needed to get out of LA for a second because it's so hot there right now.
Yeah.
And I was there for 2 or 3 hours watching kites fly, and then I went, okay, I need to now go deal with my adult responsibilities of making a comic book. So I'm living the life I wanted to live when I was 12.
Motel rooms.
Well, that too. I mean, a place where, again, 12-year-old dream come true. I can make as much of a mess as I want, and someone else will clean it up.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. That makes perfect sense to me. Kite flying is amazing. I remember we have kite festivals kind of over here. I remember looking out my kitchen window one day in our previous place and just thinking, that's a huge pink octopus in the middle of the common. Okay. This thing is about 40 or 50 feet long. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so cool. And I love stuff like that where this is so cool for no reason besides that it's really cool.
Yeah.
Like there's no deeper meaning to it. It's just a bunch of people flying kites because they like them.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
All right. Well, that was not where I expected you to be at all. I assumed you were sweltering in Los Angeles like everybody else.
No, I ran out of there like a bat out of hell.
I'm not surprised. We've just actually, the sun's really beginning to shine on me now. In fact, that's why you can only see half my face. But never mind. It was really hot it was in the 90s in London. We're just not used to that kind of thing at all this last week, but far more civilized. We were about down to the 60s and 70s this week, I think. Anyway, right. Sorry, in British, talk about the weather.
No, it's a perfect icebreaker.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here to talk about Hellraiser Anthology. And you have some news about the trade paperback.
I do. We did not announce this yet. I figured it'd be a great place to announce it right on here. And I've actually got one because they just showed up. But on the 4th of July weekend, on the web store, you can get the trade paperback of Hellraiser Anthology. It is all the stories, everything that was in the hardback, much cheaper than the previous version. And everything is in there. And the only difference is that it's a floppy cover.
Oh, wow. And what's the retail price for that?
Retail is $20.
$20.
Well, $19.99.
99. Yeah, $20 between friends. Yeah. Basically, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. That's really, really good news.
Yeah, it'll be, and you know, people can hop on the web store. They can pick that up. They could also, if they're so inclined, pick up our new Pinocchio T-Shirt, which just went live a few days ago. And actually, the shirt I'm wearing right now is on there as well, which is Daniel Serra's absolutely stunning cover art.
Yes.
And I never thought I would be one of those guys that would wear a shirt of something that I was involved in making, but the art is so beautiful that I don't feel bad doing it.
Yeah. No, I know Daniel did Barbie's the front cover of Barbie's book, the Venus Complex.
Yeah. Just beautiful.
Yeah, really interesting.
Everything he does is incredible. I don't understand how anyone, first of all, can paint in watercolors at all, let alone paint with that level of control.
It's really fascinating, isn't it? The only other artist, comic book artist I can think of off the top of my head, he used to do that regularly, was a guy called John Bolton.
Yeah. He's got a long history within the Barker verse.
Yes, absolutely. But I mean, of course, John also used to use watercolors, pen and ink, oils, and acrylics. Basically every page is just a beautiful painting.
I mean, he's still done what is, at least in my mind, the definitive version of the Yattering from his Yattering and Jack adaptation. That's what the Yattering looks like. I believe he was also the one that did Rawhead Rex.
He did, and I know what is right. And I was just turning around to see if I could actually. It doesn't often happen that I'm actually able to do this, but yeah, we're talking about that, folks.
There he is.
There he is.
There's no other possibility. That's the Yattering.
And of course, again, it's just illustrated throughout. It's absolutely extraordinary. Every time I think of Yattering and Jack, that's exactly the Yattering I think of. I can't imagine it. Let me put that back on the shelf. So yeah, and that's interesting. Of course, this collection is known as Hellraiser Anthology. And I was looking at some of the stuff online and saying, people say, "Oh, aren't these Boom Comics reprints?" Or this is not. This is all completely new.
All original, all completely new. And really, it was us trying to go back. Speaking of Bolton and that era of comics based on Clive's work, it was us going, look, let's go back to that time with those Hellraiser comics where there were absolutely brilliant teams of people, yourself included, who wrote one of my favorite stories in it, Cenobite.
Right.
Well, exclamation point at the end. So it's Cenobite. But
Thank you.
This was, that was sort of, I looked at those as these are still in Barnes & Noble. These are still remembered. They're the comics that when I talk to people that of any age, they go, no, those are the definitive Hellraiser comics. And when the rights lapsed at Boom Studios, in which I personally think we did really fantastic stuff there, we got to do, the last thing we did before the time was out was Hellraiser Bestiary, which was another anthology. And the people that did read it went, oh, this is great. The long form stuff was fun, but short self comics. And so we figured, let's do more of it.
Brilliant, and you've done really well. Now, before we move on a little further, there's two things. We should just give a quick shout out for the next two appearances of the shop and where people can actually pick up the trade paperback. And I think the next one is Midsummer Scream.
Yes, that's in Long Beach. That is, what is that, July 29th and 30th, yeah?
Yes, yep.
And yeah, I will be there. Christian Francis, who is another Seraphim employee, who was the designer, letterer, and one of the main writers of Anthology 1, who is also doing the same thing on the second anthology. He will be there as well as Vicky Barker, Clive's niece, who also helps run the web store, realclivebarker.com. And we always have so much fun at these things. They're the best. So please, if you're there, come and see us, come hang out. We like talking, we like hanging out, and you might walk away with something you'll really like.
Cool, absolutely. And then the next one after that is Son of Monsterpalooza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one is, let's see, I wrote it down. I'm a words guy, not a numbers guy. I can't remember any dates.
That's okay.
That is September 5th in Burbank.
Okay.
And that is where we're going to launch Hellraiser Anthology Volume 2.
Cool. And just because you broke up just slightly, it's September 15th to 17th in Burbank, California.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, cool. And the other thing is we just got a couple of messages come through. This is question. There's a message from Daniel Sierra. A big hug to you both. And then a question. Why is Ben so cool?
That I feel so good that he said that. I mean, he's wrong. If I was cool, I wouldn't make comic books. Cool people don't make comic books. Cool people draw comic books, though.
Now I have to say, I think that was probably true. And I think the Big Bang Theory really works to play up that idea. But actually, I don't know. I think there are, we were talking about John Bolton. I know John Bolton. He's really cool.
Well, no, cool people can illustrate comic books. But as far as, I mean, there's a certain ingredient that leads to someone becoming a comic book writer, especially if that's their main goal, which is a lot of time has to be spent sitting alone reading comic books. And so a lot of it has, you have to at least start not so cool.
Right. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
And by the way, hi, Danny.
Oh, that's okay. That's interesting. And this is gonna the next one. Okay, so Joseph, I'm going to come back to your question later because I already had that question down, but I will ask a question. But I just want to kind of roll back a little bit. Let's go back to how did you get involved with working with Clive and with comic books and so on to begin with?
Well, the two of those things are actually kind of connected. I'm a lifelong comic book fan and a lifelong Spawn fan. That was I grew up on, a lot of people grew up on X-Men or Spider-Man, and I grew up on Spawn. That was my thing, which I think ended up forming a lot of the ways that I write stories, where they all just come out ridiculously dark. But being a Spawn fan, I would religiously check the website, and suddenly, and this was before I had seen Hellraiser, before I was really familiar with anything of Clive's, they started advertising these toys called the Tortured Souls. And I was 12 years old, and I saw these pictures of one of the toys, Talisac, and he's hanging from hooks by his lips and eyelids and nostrils, and his body has been split open, and his genitals have been removed, and there's an egg shoved where they should be. And at 12 years old, I went, well, where has this been my whole life? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I need all of these toys. And it was right around the time of my 13th birthday. And my parents asked me what I wanted. And I said, I want these Tortured Souls toys. That's what I want for my birthday. And my mother said, absolutely not. I have heard of this Clive Barker. He is a sick man. What he does is disgusting. And then on the day of my 13th birthday, I was in the car with my dad, and he handed me $70, and he went, go to the comic shop and buy those stupid toys you want. And unbeknownst to me, the toys all came with chapters of a novella. And that was the first book of Clive's I read. And this was pre-Hellraiser. This was...
Ooh, Ben's frozen a moment. Let's hopefully Ben's going to come back.
Oh, come on. How about now?
Yeah, you're here.
Okay. Yeah. Where did I leave off?
You got your father giving you $70. You got the novella. Yeah.
I read the novella cover to cover, and the novella is, first of all, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. It's almost Shakespearean, and it has all of those elements, but it's also relentlessly disgusting. And both of those things, especially the latter, really resonated with me. And that was my first introduction, was that. And then after that, I watched Hellraiser, I watched Nightbreed, and then I got into the Books of Blood. And through all that, I ended up finding the Hellraiser Collected Best at Barnes & Noble. And I read that, and there were 13 at the time. I'm sorry, what was that?
It's okay. You froze just momentarily. Momentarily. Sorry. Yeah, carry on.
And I picked up the comic, and I read, there were two stories that really hit. There was Songs of Metal and Flesh by Pete Atkins, which blew me away. And then the one that really did it was Dead Things Rot by Mike Mignola. And I got to the end of that story, and I went, I want to write my own comic book scripts. I bet I could do that. And I sat down at my computer and opened up my copy of Claris Works on my Mac, so it was a while ago.
Wow.
And I wrote a Hellraiser comic script. It was called Hellraiser Darkness, and it was about a serial killer who, one of his victims happens to have the box in their pocket. And he takes the box out, becomes obsessed, and then gets turned into a Cenobite. And after that, that sort of opened up this thing inside of me where I went, this is what I want to do. I want to write comics. I want to write Hellraiser comics. That'll never happen, but I do want to write comic books. So that took me down this whole path where, I mean, my first comic was published when I was 15, and I mean, it was self-published. So it's not that impressive, but and it just became this, and it just kept going. And then when I was in my early 20s, it was a friend of a friend kind of thing. I ended up getting a text message out of the blue from my sister's friend's dad, who was managing a few things for Clive, and he knew I was a fan. And the text message just read, internship open at Clive Barker's, are you interested? And I responded, yeah, I'm interested, and started there as an intern and worked my way up. And yeah, so it really is all interconnected.
Wow. How long have you been working with Clive then?
5 years last March.
Right. Oh, cool.
So it's been a while.
That's brilliant. I had no idea about any of this stuff. Cool. All right. So this is how you got involved with Clive. I'm going to throw in a couple of questions now before we start. We come to the ones we discussed. Okay. So Joseph Zangi, your question was first, what was the process like for selecting writers for the anthology?
For the first one, the process was pretty simple. We decided we were going to do it. I sat down, Christian Francis sat down, and Mark Miller sat down, and we said, all right, well, let's just start writing stories and see what happens. And we started writing stories. There were a few that we had wanted to do when we thought that the Bestiary comic was going to be longer. So first, I fished through those, like which scripts had I not written but thought about writing that I didn't get to. And we all did that. And then I got in touch with Matt Murray, who works over at Stan Lee's POW Entertainment, who's a friend of the company. And I said, hey, we're putting together this Hellraiser book. I need an assistant editor, and I also need a contributing writer. Would you like to do a story? And his response was, of course, hell yes. Oh my God, this is the best. We did that, and then we got in touch with Rebecca and Dave McKendry, who work over at Blumhouse. They both used to be over at Fangoria, and they've been friends for a long time. And Rebecca has the Lament configuration and Leviathan tattooed on her legs and the whole thing. And I got in touch with them and said, hey, I know you guys. Do you have a story? And they went, well, we can come up with one. And really, we just sort of who do I know that's within earshot that I think would do a good job, and compiled everyone together, and we were off to the races.
And it's amazing. I have to say, one of the and this comes, Gavin Kendall, I'm going to ask you a question in just a few moments, and I just want to say,
hi Gavin.
This was to the first story, the Frank story at the beginning. Sorry, to give it its proper title, it's called Finding Frank Coffin. What I really like, I really enjoyed that story.
Oh, thank you.
And it's very interesting. It's called Finding Frank Coffin. And I just thought, oh, okay, you read it, and this comes back to something else I'd mentioned to you previously, that I'm so impressed with Christian Francis's lettering. Because he's managed to find a different style for each story, and they're absolutely perfect, because getting the narrator voice and actually getting dialogue to look so different but work within the context of the artwork particularly, I think is tremendously well done.
No, I agree with you. That it's something that was really important to both of us, was every story needs to have its own identity from top to bottom. And give them all the standard comic book lettering is, first of all, will do a disservice not only to the story, but most of all to the art, because some styles of lettering will not work with some styles of art. Daniel Serra's artwork, to put normal bubble lettering over that, which first of all gives a big white circle over his art, that's just unfair. So we we had to figure out this. It was both of us going back and forth of, okay, does this one work? No, not quite. And that one, I think took more time than any of the others, because we did not want to cover any of the art. And it was once we figured out to make all the captions look like poorly cut out pieces of paper, where it looks like somebody's using a ruler to cut it with an X-Acto knife, but they're not really getting it perfectly even. That was when we went, okay, that's the look for it. It works. And the typewriter lettering, the whole thing, it really works. And yeah, those letterers are the unsung heroes of comics, because they can make or break a book. Yeah.
I mean, I remember, obviously, when I was originally working in comics, it was literally all done by hand, and it was stuck down. I remember, gentleman's name Starr, I think Richard Starr. I probably got the name wrong, but I remember the first.
Is that Richard Starking?
Yes, Richard Starking.
Okay.
I remember talking.
I'm not much of a geek. I even know the letterers' names.
Well, I remember discussing with him, because he was one of the first people to introduce computer lettering.
Yeah.
And I remember discussing with him at Comic Con the fact that I said, okay, so how are you going to do it? Because the fact is, what makes it so, in inverted commas, human about that is the fact that the letters are all slightly different. They're not, and he said, well, I've got 3 or 4 different choices for each E. So every time I hit E on the keyboard, it won't be the same as the previous one. Because we saw an awful lot of lettering, you saw an awful lot of digital coloring, and then you saw, and all these beautifully, well, in fact, not beautifully, all these blocks of text laid over digital coloring when these things first came in. It's just like, this just looks mechanical. It doesn't look like a living, breathing experience. It just looks like something that is churned out.
And that's something that still to this day happens in comics, where you'll pick up a comic, and a lot of the times you won't realize why it feels disingenuous, for lack of a better term, but you're looking through it and you end up realizing, oh, it's because the letters don't feel like they came from somebody's mind. They feel like they came out of a computer.
Yeah.
And that's, it does. Comics are still such an organic, collaborative process that any part of it that does not feel that way will stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the same. What, again, I like about the first story is the fact that when we get to the dialogue, it is literally just the letters, and there's just a little line to indicate which character is speaking, rather than the tails on the bubbles. And
which is actually, funny enough, that's a trick that we stole from Richard Starking.
Oh, really?
It was me looking at, it was old issues of Hellspawn and Sam and Twitch, and I was going, they need to look work.
Right.
So yeah, again, full circle.
Yeah. Okay, well, the question I mentioned Gavin earlier on, Gavin Kendall from Kendall Reviews here. He likes taxidermy. Like Taxidermy, to give it its proper title, one of the short stories he wrote, is one of the most disturbing things I've read.
Oh, that warms my heart.
Amazing as it is, just the one page. What was the inspiration?
That one was one of the contributing artists, Riley Schmitz, who I've worked with a lot. He and I have been working together for years. He was actually doing Next Testament fan art and sending it to Mark. And Mark sent his info to me and went, I don't know what to do with this kid. He keeps sending me stuff and I don't, am I supposed to respond? What am I supposed to do? And I got in touch with him and I went, hey, your stuff is really cool. Here's a script, draw it. And this was years ago. And he and I have just done comics together for fun for years. And which actually I'm finally going to be able to collect and publish. And that'll be at the Famous Monsters Halloween Bash. I'll have a booth there. I think you'll be there too.
Oh,
that's the Famous Monsters, because they're having the whole Hellraiser reunion thing.
I can neither confirm nor deny, which basically, as you can tell from our section, am I? Oh, okay. That sounds really cool. What's it called again? Famous Monsters. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, I hope to be there because it's
I
really cool. Yeah. Where is it?
That's in Northern California. It's San Jose, California in October.
I don't think it's been announced officially yet.
Oops. Well, in that case, never. I have no idea what. I just up sometimes. I'm a writer, you know.
No.
Whoops.
That's right.
This is live, folks.
It is live. Yeah. Well, this proves it's live. Yeah. And something for everyone to look forward to as well.
You got to put an 8-second delay on this, man. Whoops. Nonetheless, we did a bunch of comics together, and when the anthology started, I of course got in touch with him and I went, hey, we've been doing these things for fun. Isn't this great? But good news, we get to do a Hellraiser comic together. And his response was just F and then about 10,000 U's and then CK. And he was amazed. And it's sort of the thing we really wanted to do together, and got in touch with him for that. And out of the blue after that, he sent me a text message and he said, hey, you know that old wives' tale about dead babies being hollowed out and filled with heroin to smuggle over the Mexican border? And I wrote back, yeah, I'm familiar with that. It isn't true, but I'm familiar with it, yes. And he then wrote back, well, what if someone was doing that with the puzzle box? And then it was that, and then this whole other story where it all led to these other things. And I wrote back to him, stop with the first part, you just hit oil. Let's stick with that. And maybe 20 minutes after he sent me the text message, I sent him the first draft of the script. And I said, you mean like this? And he went, oh my God, that's perfect. So then we ended up going back and forth with it until we both felt that it was perfect. And I wanted to do something that was a mood piece that did exist solely to be disgusting. But to just shock without any semblance of eloquence or anything like that is no good, which is I worked really hard on the captions in it to really try and give it a flow vibe that, because what's the right way of putting it? The more eloquent something is, the more disturbing the subject matter within will be.
Yes.
Because it's not being done as this sort of juvenile, hey, look at the chewed up food on my tongue kind of disgust. It's no, I want to make you feel bad in the pit of your stomach.
Yes.
And that one really came from that. And I may as well mention it on here. There is more to the story, and there are 2 follow-up stories in Hellraiser Anthology Volume 2. Exact same creative team. It'll be Jim Terry on the art, myself on the script, and Riley Schmitz coming up with the story. So there's like taxidermy as in the first one, and then in the second one, we're going to have like shipping and like whispers. And that will complete the trilogy of stories.
Wow. I was just looking at it again now, and I think this is one of the things I was really impressed by when I first read the anthology, which just came into my Christian very kindly sent me a copy of it. It's just like, is, as we've alluded to before, it takes me back to the original Hellraiser comics, the epic. One of my favorite stories from the original Hellraiser comic, and I'm going to forget the artist's name, but it's called Simply Fetus.
Oh, is that Ted McKeever?
It's Ted McKeever.
Dance of the Fetus, right?
Is it Dance?
Something like that.
It's something. It's definitely Fetus.
The woman that slits her wrists in the tub.
Yeah, and it's great because it's a Hellraiser story. It's absolutely there. It has no caption. It has no dialogue.
Yeah.
It's purely thing. It has no Cenobites. It has no.
Well, there's a guy that in the end that I guess could be considered a Cenobite, and that's something that we didn't do in volume 1, but that I want to start introducing more. Well, I guess actually Mark Millar's story in volume 1, his prose story, is that same kind of vibe. The tonally Hellraiser. Yeah. But not necessarily, it's not someone finding the box, and it's not Pinhead, but the vibe and the way it makes you feel, it's tonally Hellraiser.
Yeah, and I think, that's one of the things that I find so exciting about it, because I remember with the epics that people saying, okay, well, every story inevitably becomes find the box, end in hell. And it was always really hard to find a new way of doing this when we were writing, and so a new twist on it. You mentioned Cenobite with the exclamation mark and so on. Finding that it actually became really quite challenging, but that's what I think you do so successfully. And I really love what was the original thinking of introducing a prose story into the middle of a comics anthology?
It was actually, a lot of it was influenced by Hellbound Hearts, the prose collection, which I think is absolutely brilliant. And I wanted to know what the response would be really to putting a prose story in a comic book. And I wanted to know if people would be okay with it, if there would be a backlash. People have really liked it, and I think, especially because of where it's placed in the dead center of the comic book. So it's this nice little break from what has been going on. And the whole thing with Anthology, the mission statement from the get-go was variety. And putting a prose story in the middle of a comic, that's variety.
Yeah.
And also Mark really wanted to write a prose story, and I can't be the person to tell Mark Millar not to write a prose story. Because he's really good at it.
He is. He's very good at it. He's
also my boss, and so I can't tell him no.
But I think I swear there used to be comics where you got prose stories. I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking annuals. There
was also Books of the Damned, which was another early 90s epic comics thing, which was art done in a comic book style, but all with prose stories, which was also an inspiration toward it. And it's something that now people are trying, this book is something, it was never reprinted. It's hard to track down, and there's people really trying to find it. And that was another thing of going, well, this is a 25-year-old thing, and people are still trying to track it down. So there must be something to it. That must mean that people want this. And so much of it was trying to figure out. And the fact is that myself and everyone involved in the creative process of the book are gigantic Hellraiser fans. So we're there going, well, first and foremost, what do we want out of a Hellraiser book? And then will that translate to what other people want? And all we can do is hope and pray that it does. And with the first volume, it absolutely did. People responded to it so favorably, which still does not stop warming my heart. It's still a thrill.
It's yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it's kind of variety, because and I think it's what really helps explore the mythos further. And yeah, no, incredibly well. It works incredibly well. Okay, I'm getting two more questions coming in.
All right.
You're very popular, Ben. This is from our friend Seraphim.
I know Seraphim. Hi, Seraphim. Oh my God, Seraphim, I love you.
He says, "Who is your favorite superhero comic book character, Nick and Ben?"
Ooh, well, he hasn't been in a comic book yet, but my favorite superhero is Wu Manchu, who may or may not be Seraphim's alter ego. But really, though, I guess my favorite comic book hero, it's got to be Spawn, and it's either Spawn or Batman. I like the. I'm not a huge superhero fan in general. I think that individual stories told about superheroes can be incredible, but as an overarching kind of thing, it's not my first go-to. Right. I'd be much more likely to be reading an indie comic than one of the big two. But yeah, I'll have to say Spawn, because that's the one that I grew up on. Still near and dear to me.
Yeah, I suppose if we're talking about standard superheroes, then it's Doctor Strange for me.
Doctor Strange is really, really cool.
He's just, and I think they did an incredibly good job on the movie, particularly with the folding of the reality in the different worlds, and because that's kind of how I remember the comics. That you had these worlds within worlds, and so on. I thought they did really good, and it's Steve Ditko, I think, the original artist. And
yeah. Well, it's funny, and there's a connection there too, which is Spawn stole Doctor Strange's cape. They wear the same cape.
I never got to read. I never read Spawn. It was kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was definitely a product of the time, and for me, it was that I was a kid, and the covers were things like Spawn kicking somebody's head into a sidewalk and all their teeth shooting out. And I was a little kid, and I was a gorehound, and I went, "Oh, this looks awesome!" And then it turned out to actually be a very good story and a cool character.
Todd McFarlane.
Todd McFarlane. Yeah.
Todd McFarlane. Cool. All right. So that's the answer to that one, Seraph. And the other one comes in from Scott Cowens. Hi guys. First off, absolutely love the first anthology.
Is there any thank you.
It's really nice when you hear things like that, isn't it?
It really is.
Is there any chance we'll see comic book anthologies based on other creations of Clive aside from Hellraiser?
Absolutely. It's something that we really want to do. It is all very much reliant on the Hellraiser comics doing well. This is really the hope is that this is only the beginning. We start with this stuff. We start with the known thing, but there are so many. Clive is an idea machine. He has so many ideas, and each one is more brilliant than the last. And the idea of being able to take them and translate them into comics to then bring them out into the world so that they could be other things, or if they just remain as comics, fantastic. But yeah, we definitely want to do that. We want to do as many as possible.
Right.
But first we're focusing on the one that we know people will look for.
Yeah. Okay, so one of the questions come back. Something I mentioned before is, what is it like writing and then editing your own work? Because obviously you've written the stories, but you're also editing the anthology. How did you deal
with my stories? A lot of it is asking opinions from other people, because it's almost impossible to edit one's own work. I can spell check it myself. I can, that I can do, but as far as the actual content of, is this a story even worth telling? that on the first anthology was going to Matt Murray, the assistant editor on that, and going, is this story stupid? Is it good? I don't know. And he was great with that, because it was just either yes or no, which is exactly what you want to hear. Not like a whole, well, you could, or you could this, or you could that. It's either yes or no. And usually it was yes. I mean, with Finding Frank Cotton, which is, I've never been more scared writing a story in my life, for a lot of reasons. First of all, it's a prequel to something people love, using a character that people love. And the idea of going into that and messing it up terrified me. Also, writing a story from the point of view of an S&M obsessed woman was very intimidating. The idea, and that one I ended up sending to 2 friends of mine and going, look, I know that you're kind of into the scene and all that stuff, and you're also a woman. Please tell me if this is offensive, because for the first time in my life, I'm trying to write a story that is not offensive. I want it to be as true to life as possible. So, I mean, with my stories, everyone else sends their stories to me, and I go, okay, cool, change this, this, and this. With mine, I sort of have to go out to a lot of different sources, and of course, because I'm a writer and am infinitely self-conscious, I send it to someone and they go, this is great. And I go, okay, well, they're lying. I got to send it to one other person. And maybe I'll find someone that will tell me the truth, that it's terrible. But yeah, I mean, that's really, it's just, I try and get as many opinions as possible, which really does factor into the compiling and editing of the whole thing. Is every time a story is finished, when they were finished for volume 1, when they're getting finished now for volume 2, I print them out. I drop some with Mark, I drop some with Christian, I drop some with Clive. I just go like, all right, I want to make sure that I have not gone off the rails, that I'm not here going, oh, this is great, and then it comes out and it's gibberish.
Right, right.
So, you know, it's very much a collaborative process. But yeah, so with mine, it's much more of a collaborative process than any of the others, because I don't trust myself to know what I've written has been good or bad.
Right. It must be really hard. Okay, another question that has come in from Michael Keats is, any chance of a Nightbreed comic, Innovation Comics in the 90s reboot?
There is a chance, yes. Beyond that, it's something we've talked about in-house a little bit. But beyond that, we're still sort of in the, hey, we'll see where all this goes stage. Right. But yeah, that's something we would absolutely love to do.
Yeah.
And there's an idea that Clive had as a way of expanding the Nightbreed mythology that I thought was incredible. So it is something that we're definitely thinking about.
Oh, cool.
And that's as much as I'm going to say.
Well, if you're looking for writers,
absolutely. Well, and you have history with Nightbreed, not only from the film, but you were doing the comics, which were brilliant.
Absolutely. And famously,
they were so cool.
Thank you, but also famously had to squash 6 issues into 2.
As these things go in comics.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, it's just that's wonderful. It's just such a wonderful world, the world of Nightbreed.
Oh yeah.
To go through. Okay, so one of the questions I do want to touch upon was the pin-up gallery. In volume 1 is quite extraordinary. How did that come? Again, you know, we've now got 3 elements to Hellraiser Anthology, and incidentally, I do like the title Hellraiser Anthology. It is not kind of all-encompassing.
I wanted to just go simple. I didn't want it to be a long title or something that could be misconstrued as something that it is not. I just wanted Hellraiser Anthology. It looks great on a page. It sounds good, and it explains what it is. And there were so many there were a lot of titles that we batted back and forth. And finally, I just went, we're coming up with all these really clever ideas, but all the clever ones, if we end up doing 20 volumes of this clever idea isn't going to seem so clever by that time. So let's just go as simple as possible and leave it at that. And that was what we did.
Yeah. Well, also it does leave you, it gives you room to play.
Yeah.
Which, and internet, coming back to my original point, was the pin-up gallery. Was this always there from the very beginning, or just something that came
Yes,
about?
I absolutely wanted to. Yeah, we all wanted to have one in there, and there were a few people that I reached out to at the very beginning: Chris Alex, Zach Morissette, Cool Skull, and Riley Schmitz, who's also one of the contributing artists. But I reached out to them and said, "Hey, just a heads up, we want to do a pinup gallery. I want to let you guys know first because you're 4 people that I really want to have in this." And Chris Alex is a makeup artist, and I went, well, I want there to be photography in there. I want it to be varied. And she did that beautiful. Actually, hold on a second. She did this here, which is all just makeup, and there's no photo manipulation. It's just a photograph, and she's absolutely brilliant. And that piece, I thought, really helped bring it all together, where again the name of the game was variety. We have sculpture, we have illustration, we have makeup, and the rest of them came from us doing a Facebook contest. We said, hey, you've got a month, draw something Hellraiser related or sculpt it or take a picture or whatever. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of submissions. And it was actually heartbreaking going through them, because it was going, I actually want to just make a book that's just everything that was submitted, which sounds like such a oh well, everyone did good kind of, everyone gets a participation trophy. They were really good. And choosing not only the best ones, because that wasn't the thought, it was which ones fit well together, which ones don't conflict with ones that are already in there. There was a lot that went into it. So just because one of the submissions was not in the book, it was not informative or indicative of their of the quality of the work. It really ended up being this weird art gallery curation kind of thing of, okay, if this image is on this page, what's going to be on this page? What's going to make it all work? And that ended up becoming a whole editorial process in and of itself, which that part I was not expecting. I thought it was just going to be, we'll just dump them in, it'll be fine. And then my obsessive brain took over, and it was time to make sure that it was perfect.
Yeah. No, it's kind of like it sounds like a very similar. Having spoken to festival directors, film festival directors, they're saying, when they're putting together short stories, it has to work as a whole. And stuff will get dropped, even though you like it, even though you really, really respect it.
Yeah,
it just doesn't happen to fit in this particular thing. I mean, I think therefore the interesting thing is that then things tend to go off and have a life elsewhere. With these things. Okay, we've got 2 more questions. Well, 2 more questions. I say this. Scott Cowans. So, Hellraiser anime in the future then?
Funny that he should say that. Not a cartoon anime television kind of thing, but there are some anime elements in a story that's coming up in volume 2, which I don't want to get into it too much, but it is written by Matt Murray with art by Riley Schmitz, and it is called Collect 'Em All. And it may or may not be related to a very, very popular children's fad that may or may not have caused a lot of seizures. And I think people will really like it, because it's a totally out of left field kind of story, and it's really, really fun.
Oh, cool! I love the reason. Right?
So Hellraiser anime in the future, kind of.
Yeah. Okay, and you never know.
Yeah.
What I may eventually. Can't imagine. I'm considering how much the Japanese took Hellraiser to its heart. I think originally when it first came out, I can't imagine that somebody somewhere.
Oh, see, I want to see it as an anime children's show. I want Pinhead. He only gets his power when he throws all the pins into his head, and he's shooting energy beams out of his palms. The whole thing.
Oh yeah, oh god, yeah.
And he has to get really enormous to fight his enemy.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then and those big eyes, just those incredibly big
Yeah.
eyes for everything. And then when he gets angry, all the little lines at the corner of the
Yeah,
eyes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The pins start glowing when he gets angry.
We should do that right here and now. Yes. Gavin Kendall, will the anthology stay as a Clive Barker store exclusive?
For the time, as it stands right now, yes. But anything can happen in the future.
Right. Okay.
As it stands right now, we've got a great way of getting this book directly to people that will appreciate it for what it is. As it stands, I mean, with the first volume, the thing that we ended up talking about in-house was there are stories in this that will make it difficult for, say, a Barnes & Noble to carry it. It is explicitly sexual.
You show an erection, that means that you couldn't sell it in a store. Actually, no, an erection is okay. It's the penetration that might be bad.
Yeah, I don't think we show any direct penetration, even though I'm sure I probably did ask for it in one of my scripts.
It's a bound erection as well, come to think of it. I probably spent far too long looking at that particular panel.
But that is part of it, is that I didn't want any of us to have to filter ourselves in that way. I mean, it's when we were doing it with Boom Studios, and this was of no fault of anybody's, it's just how the industry works. It would be, yeah, we can't have too much blood on the cover and maybe not too much sex inside. And I kept going, without blood and sex, I feel like we lose a bit with Hellraiser, considering it is the definitive blood and sex mythology. That is such a big part of it. And finding ways to dance around it, I think, necessity is the father of invention. It ended up with all these really brilliant ways to dance around that and ways to substitute it. But with this one, I wanted to get to the source of it. I wanted to get to the heart of it, and just go all out that was my biggest rule, was no censorship whatsoever.
Yeah.
Let's do it, and let's do it in the way that the creators feel like their twisted vision is being seen for real. I don't want it. I wanted it to feel more like a copy of Zap Comics than where R. Crumb started and that kind of thing, where it was people's twisted sexual fantasies that they were just drawing out and putting unfiltered. And there's a genuine feeling to that, and it's a troubling feeling, because peering directly into somebody's psyche is seldom a comforting thing. And that was something I really wanted to tap into, is that feeling of disturbingness, for lack of a better term. So for right now, it is available only on the web store, realclivebarker.com, and at conventions.
Right.
But we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this is one of the things I found so refreshing about Volume 1 when I saw it. But it's exactly as you say, it literally takes the phrase "there are no limits" and runs with it.
Yeah.
That is what it's about. Okay, well, we're coming towards the end of the show. It's amazing how time flies with these things. So we need to talk about Volume 2.
Absolutely.
So what else is coming up in Volume 2? You've alluded to one of the stories, in fact, a few of the stories, but what else can people look forward to?
We got with Volume 2, I wanted to start bringing in some new people that were not in Volume 1. I also wanted to bring back as many people from Volume 1 as possible. So almost everyone from Volume 1 has come back. All the writers have come back. We've got Daniel Serra, who's doing the cover again, who is also providing art for a story that myself and Mark Miller wrote together called Confession, which, speaking of no limits, that's that one. It was a story that ended up so troubling that I went, the only person that can do this is Daniel, because his art is so beautiful. It will help dull how upsetting the story is. So that one, I'm very excited to see what people's response is to that one. We've got Zach Thompson and Lonnie Nadler, who are doing a comic book right now called The Dregs, which is it's a hard comic to explain. The opening scene of the first issue is a homeless guy being injected with Listerine to get him high, and then his head gets chopped off and he gets ground up into meat to feed to rich people. And so I started reading their book and became quite a fan. I love your expression right now.
I've seen this.
Yeah, it came out recently.
Yes, I have no idea how I came across it, but it really is wonderful.
And that comic, I started reading it because it's totally different. I've never read anything quite like it. And most importantly to me, it was the way that the comic is laid out. There will be, 11 panels on a page, but it doesn't feel crowded. And there's all these little tricks that they do. And I went, to the point where after I read the first issue, it made me reassess how I write comics. And they forced me to see all of these possibilities. And so I was hanging out with them at a convention, and they mentioned that they would love to be a part of the anthology at some point. And when we got confirmed that we were going to do volume 2, they were the first people I got in touch with, because they're coming at all this from such a different perspective. And again, variety, that's the name of the game. And their story is amazing. It's dark and twisted, and the artist they've got on it, which is a guy named Christian DeBari, who is being colored by Simon Goff, who is one of the ever seen. And the story is turning out phenomenally. We've got, we've got so many stories. I mean, this one, the first one had, if I remember right, 11 stories. This one has 16.
Oh, wow.
So we're doing more.
Is that more page count as well?
Yes, higher page count. It's looking like we're going to be about 20 pages higher than the first one.
Wow.
Which is exciting, and done in 7.5 months less than the first one took. Which would explain the bags under my eyes.
Right.
And we've got so many. Mark Miller contributed a 1-page story that is so deep in the concept that it could have been 20 pages. We've got so many. Rebecca and Dave McKendry came back. They did Scalps in the first of all. They've come back and done a story called Octagon, which is illustrated by Mark Torres, who also illustrated a story called The Test, which we put the first preview page out for that, which is the chimpanzee holding the the puzzle box. And
I showed Craig that one because I just think it's so. Apart from it, it's just the guy at the sides going, "This is ridiculous."
Yeah, and that one I'm really excited. Like, I really wanted to put that first page out to get people thinking of where that could go. Because I don't think anyone's going to guess where it goes. It's a story that some stories take, a year to figure out, to get everything right. This was Christian Francis and I with The Test, and it started with he and I loitering at the office late, and Christian walking into the room and just going, "Wait, what happens if an animal opens the box?" And I went, what, like a dog? And he goes, "No, a dog can't open it. It doesn't have fingers. Like a monkey. Like, what happens if a chimpanzee opens the box?" And we had this long, intense, quick, manic conversation where I was just sitting there drawing the pages. I mean, not drawings, but just going like, okay, it could be that. And 15 minutes later, we went, okay, let's use this story. This is a cool story. It's fun. And yeah, that's where it came from, was this just explosion of an idea. And I'm really excited about that one. What else have we got? We've got so many things in there. We've got a story by this guy named Nicholas Vince, who wrote a story that is, your story profoundly unsettled me. There are parts of it that made me feel so ooky, and that is the highest compliment that I could possibly give. And but it's so heartfelt, and it's so great, and it is. And as we talked about in the press release for the announcement, it is the origin of the Chatterer, and it's so exciting for me to know that people are going to get to see this. And it was really also incredibly exciting for me to open up the thing and go, "Oh my God, I've got a thing from the Chatterer about, like, this is." Me at 13 years old got really excited in class and didn't know why. And, you know, it's like, it was just the best. It's such a great story.
And I think, and I've discussed with you, and I think I've kind of, I put the post up the other day, just like, you know, that 13-year-old fanboy you had. It was the moment I saw, you know, written by Nicholas Vince, illustrated by Clive Barker. It just completely blew me away. But and the story of that story is, I think, as I was looking it up, it's just over 3,000 words now. And it was a complete, when I went back, because I'd mentioned this to Christian, and you come back to very kindly say you'd like to have a look at it. And then you had to chase me again, because I was so deep in the middle of doing pre-production of films, and going, oh God, I've really got to do something about this. So I looked at it again, and I just thought, and I had literally not looked at it for probably more than a year. And I just thought, yeah, incredibly way too long. I hate most of this. And I literally just cut page after page after page, and I thought, you know what, we had to come. It's like, you know what? No, this is what I actually really feel about this. I'm going to stop pussyfooting around what I'm actually thinking about here. And I just thought, and then there's that thing in my mind. Clive just said, you know, never censor yourself. Other people will always, other people will always do that. And I think a lot of the time as a writer, it's kind of like I censor myself, because you think, well, I can't really do that. That's going to be just too far. But that was the great, and I think all the other artists and writers who are involved in the anthology are so obviously just saying, you know what? No, we can just say, this is what's in our mind.
Yeah. No, and it's a liberating feeling. It's an unbelievably liberating feeling. It's also terrifying to go, well, there is no safety net. There's no person here to say you are being too blank. You're being too sexual, too violent, too whatever. So that is, in a way, scary, because you don't necessarily know how the public at large will respond to the dark recesses of one's mind put on paper. But the thing that with the first anthology, what really amused me was that nobody said that they were offended. Nobody said that they were unwantingly terrified or disgusted. There was a part of me that wanted somebody to say that it was too much and to call me a monster, but that didn't happen. And I think, so I think that there's something to selling it, delivering it directly to people that are already familiar and big fans of Clive's work. They know what they're getting into, and and it's not, they're not picking this thing up off the shelf at a 7-Eleven. It's being delivered to their door. They open the box. They know what they're going to get.
Yes. Okay, well, the last question that's just come in is from Neil Without Your Head. Hi, Neil. Is the Chatter origin story about the child seen in Hellbound at the end, or does Nicholas bypass that, or do we have to wait and read for ourselves?
That's up to you. Do they have to wait and read for themselves?
I think they should read and wait for themselves. I like I like people. I like the idea of people twisted in anticipation.
Me too.
Yeah. No, that's part of the joy of this stuff. I'm not going to answer that question. It is. This is the great thing about, it's all part of the fun of it. It's that you have to wait for things. I know people are really not into that in our modern day, but actually,
and I don't know why. It's every commercial you see for a movie is, well, we're just going to show you the whole movie truncated, and then it's, well, why see the movie?
I know.
So it's that's another thing is with the first anthology, where we had this whole debate of how much do we show, because so many comic companies will do the first 8 pages of a 22-page comic, they'll show that. And I went, no, we'll show a few pages. Like, if people like what they see, they'll pick it up.
Yeah.
No matter how many pages you show, no matter how much of the movie you show, no matter how much of whatever, how long the book excerpt is, or what have you, if somebody wants it, they're going to get it. And if they don't, they won't, no matter how much of it you show to them.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it is that thing of, that's what the artist intended. When, whatever the form is, I'm a huge thing about hating spoilers, and I've written short stories about the fact I really, really hate spoilers, because that's what they spoil things. It's like, wait.
It ruins, yeah, it's
Yeah.
You're supposed to get a certain, think about movies with twist endings, and if you knew the twist, how unfun that movie is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing is that for the people that are creating these things, it is just as much fun. It's just as much fun for myself to watch someone react to something that I've written than it is for me to. It's actually far more fun than the process of writing or the process of coming up with the idea or even any of that stuff. I want to watch somebody react to something, to one of my brain babies. Whether that reaction, and it's irrelevant what the reaction is, but to incite a feeling or an emotion in somebody with something that came out of your head it's one of the greatest.
Oh God, yeah, and incredibly vulnerable as well. I mean, one thing I will tell you, Neil, is, every time I think about this story now and the fact that people are going to read it, it's like, oh, actually, I feel a little vulnerable now, because that's opened up stuff. Now.
No, but I mean, when I read it, it's something that there's something so genuine about the story, and something so. It's what makes it troubling. It's that there needs to be a piece of us inside of these things, or else if you don't put any of your humanity into something that you want someone to read or watch or what have you, how can you expect them to have a human reaction? Otherwise, they're just looking at something, again, going back to the lettering thing, it's something mechanical.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's a really good point to wind this to a close. Let's remind people. Let's just remind people when they can get Volume 1 trade back. That is right. I've got the dates in front of me. I've got Midsummer Scream in July in Long Beach, July 29th and 30th. That's the first chance to get the trade paperback.
The first chance to get the trade paperback is actually July 4th on realclivebarker.com.
Beg your pardon. Yeah, so in person, yes.
Yes.
On
but the first chance to get
realclivebarker.com.
in person, Midsummer Scream.
Yeah, and Volume 2 hardback will be available at Son of Monsterpalooza on the 15th to the 17th of September.
And then it will be available on the web store starting from the 24th of September.
Okay, cool. All right. So,
you get it in person first.
Yeah, get it in person first. It's much nicer if things are in person.
Oh yeah,
than physically.
And if you happen to be there, you'll be stunned at how happy I am for each person that picks up a copy. I am the day that I am jaded enough that it does not delight me to no end that someone wants to pick up something that I have a story in is the day that I will get out of this industry.
Yeah. No, I'm really looking forward to meeting people after they've read the stories, and God, that's so exciting, actually.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
It's the weirdest thing. Like, people have come up to me and they've gone, "Oh yeah, I read the book," and I'm there like, "Oh, they're gonna." That's why would someone be calling me in this motel room? But someone coming up and saying, "Oh, I read the book and I loved it," and they're going, "Yeah, but I mean, it's really twisted. You're not going to look at me like, oh, right, you understand the horror industry. That horror people are like the nicest people." But I have, again, there's the part of me that does kind of want someone to look at me with a sideways glance and go like, "Oh, well, where did that story come from?"
Yeah. Anyway, okay. It sounds as if you might actually they're probably phoning out to tell you the building's on fire or something. So I think
that's all right. I'll get out in time.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I can't hear any alarms. It's something else. You've probably used up all your Wi-Fi data or something.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Ben, thank you so much indeed for coming and joining me on this.
Thank you for having me on. And everybody watching, I can't wait for you to see Volume 2, and I cannot wait for you to read Nick's story. You're gonna love it. You'll never think of the Chatterer the same way again, in the best way. It's so good.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, this has been Chattering with Nicholas Vince. I've been chatting with Ben Meares. I can't tell you what's happening on the show next week. As far as I'm aware, there's going to be one, but I'm just waiting for a few people to confirm things. But I will announce during the week what's happening next week. In the meantime, take care and stay spooky. Cheerio, and I'm going to hit the stop broadcast button.